All right, in this video, we're talking about when you should sell your Amazon FBA business. So we have Ryan Condie here of Quiet Light Brokerages. Ryan, you're an expert in this field, and I know you've consulted with a bunch of people that are selling their FBA businesses. Typically, like, how long does it even take to sell an FBA business? Because then maybe you can work backwards from there if people have like a target date in mind.
Yeah, good question. So there's things that you could do in advance, and then there's things that, if you're looking to get out right now, it's a little tricky to make those changes into the business. So it's always better to start thinking about your exit 12 months, 18 months, 24 months in advance. Not that it takes that long to sell a business, but, obviously you could fix things within your business. In terms of taking it, the process and how long it could potentially take, Eric, and a lot of times we've seen it when the business package is ready and you take something to market, it can take anywhere from a few weeks to several months. Historically, businesses would be on the market for 8, 9, 10 months. This is pre-2020. And then post-2020, we saw those numbers drop down to closer to like 3 to 4 months. And what we're seeing right now across all the deals is most Amazon FBA businesses on average take about 120 days. So about 4 months from launching it, doing buyer-seller calls, actually having those conversations, getting under an offer, an LOI, and doing due diligence from there, and then closing up and wrapping up. So it's a multi-month process for most people. There are rare exceptions where it happens in a few weeks or for smaller deals, but typically the larger the transaction, the further due diligence will need to be done.
Okay. And I know with especially like FBA e-commerce, like Q4 is huge for a lot of different businesses. How do you consider seasonality when it comes to selling a business? Like, should you be selling like before you have a big rush of sales, right after? Like, how do you consider that? And what's your advice to people who have a seasonal business?
Yeah, that's a great question, Eric. So I always say there's a couple different types of seasonality. I have friends who sell puzzles, right? Well, 80-90% of their revenue is going to become in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? That's an extreme version of a seasonality of a business. There are other businesses that might see a 30, 40, 50% of their revenue come through in November, December. That's a lot more predictable and a lot less, right? So taking that first example with the puzzle where you have 90% of your sales in a short amount of time, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to sell your business right after your peak season. If those are the selling dates of when you're going to sell most of your product. You need to actually sell that business by August or September, especially for people if they're looking for financing, for banks, or if they're just looking for general cash flow for them, the business. You'll take a big hit by selling right after the peak. Now, most businesses, Eric, you're going to find will have some seasonality. And if it's not, too astronomical, it doesn't necessarily matter so much as the time of when they're selling, right? You can't time the market. You can't time when the perfect time is to sell your business. Those are very difficult things. So I almost say it's a little bit more tied to your own goals as the entrepreneur. And if your business has some sort of seasonality to it, it's better to be upfront with buyers of when those look like. And a lot of times people think, I want to take over a business right when it's peak season. That can be actually a really tricky time. So typically you want to take over the business a few months before peak season, or any of the seasonality you have within your business to learn the ropes, make a few mistakes, and get up to speed within a business.
I could see too, like if it was something where the seller was staying on to help for a little bit, it might be helpful to have that first busy rush season for that communication.
And a lot of people look at that from a cash flow perspective too, Eric. So, if you're taking over a business and you just had this huge peak season and all of a sudden you're going to be dead for the next 3 or 4 months, it's really going to hurt your cash flow as a buyer. And so, yes, they can learn the business, but if their cash flow drops to zero, your multiple might actually take a hit from there.
I could also see too, as a buyer, like a lot of times it's like trying to pique their imagination, right, of what could be. So it's like, let's say you did have one of these businesses that every year seemed to go up 20% during that peak season. And they're sitting there like, maybe this peak season will be another 20%, but who knows? It kind of depends on the buyer. But how do you weigh like risk and reward of selling now or down the line? Because it's like, I'm sure it's a conversation that goes back and forth between a lot of people's heads when they're thinking about selling their business. They're like, should I just keep this thing and hold it forever? Should I sell it now? Should I sell it in 2 years? How do you determine that when you talk to somebody?
Yeah, and this is a really interesting question, Eric, because I've actually lived this myself. I've sold multiple businesses, 3 Amazon FBA businesses. I've sold multiple other types of businesses. So I've put myself in the operator and in the seller's shoes, but I've also been a buyer. So I've been on the other side of the table. And then now in my role as a broker, I help people come up with these decisions all the time, Eric, because I'm working with them constantly. So I think this is less of a FBA question and more of like just a general business question is when is the right time to sell? And we touched on, you can't time the market. You can't time the perfect time to sell your business. It's just like the stock market. You can't time it better than anybody else. It just doesn't work like that. I think it's taking it a step back and understanding your own entrepreneur energy life cycle within that business and that opportunity and the other factors that could be happening in your life, right? Many people are going through a loss in the family or a divorce or health issues or any of those things. Those are real things that happens to sellers. But a lot of times entrepreneurs are, the reason they're entrepreneurs is they have the shiny object syndrome. They move on to the next idea, but they haven't quite finished the previous one. And I'm a victim of that too. And so what that allows, what typically happens in there is understanding your energy life cycle for that particular idea and business. And when you start to see that the grass is greener on the other side, or you're not, doing the right things within the business, or you're just not that interested anymore. And this can happen at year 2 or year 5 or year 7. But with many entrepreneurs, after a few years in, they're ready for that next opportunity and a challenge. What I recommend to entrepreneurs and sellers is when you start to feel that pressure, you need to do a gut check and say, hey, is this the right time to sell? Or do I still have enough energy to double down and fix a few things within my business? If your energy life cycle is starting to go down pretty quickly, that's the right time to start thinking about and exploring a sale. Because if you start going down that path too much, then you don't have the ability and the energy to fix those things within your business. And some of the things that, like, if you don't know if your energy is low within a business, like, are you getting slower and slower at replying to customer support emails? Are you a little slower on getting your inventory purchases for your holiday season or for your seasonality within your business? It's those little things that you'll notice that you just kind of slack off a little bit, and those will start to catch up for you. So I think it's more important to understand your energy life cycle. And knowing that entrepreneurship is a roller coaster, selling is a roller coaster, you're going to have ups and downs. And if you look to sell your business when you're completely emotionally spent, it's almost too late, right? You still have to have a little bit of energy left to actually go through the sale. Because when you do go through a sale, it's like you're going to be running your current business in a completely separate business as you go through and look to that exit.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I've learned as an entrepreneur too is, like, when looking at that energy life cycle, it's like what actually gives you energy within the business, like whether it's, core values or anything. And like for me, what I've discovered is I like novelty and new challenges. And once I figure things out and it gets easy, my energy starts to go like this. So what I've learned is I can start to focus on different aspects of the business and try to create new challenges. But at a certain point, you might just max out on those things and it's just ready for somebody else to take this thing to the next level and work on a new challenge or get into something new. I think that's part of the beauty of entrepreneurship is there's so many different things you can be doing, especially in today's day and age with FBA businesses. If you have that skill set, you can sell this, and then you could probably even work with somebody like Brian, get a new business, buy it, optimize that business. There's so many things you can be doing.
I think you nailed something really key there is, as an entrepreneur, it's okay to say, hey, this business has outgrown me, or I'm ready to move on to the next thing. Sometimes we always think bigger, faster is better, right? How do I scale it? How do I become this huge company? And a lot of times entrepreneurs are starting a business to enhance their own lifestyle. One of the most common things I see, Eric, is people come to me and say, hey, like, I've scaled my business to a certain point, but in order for me to grow it, I need to, reinvest significantly back in new product, or I've got to hire employees. And, that would actually prohibit my lifestyle. Now I don't want to have employees, right? All those things are okay. It's okay to say, I'm not the person to take it from, I'm the person to take it from 0 to 1 or 1 to 10, but not the person to take it from 10 to 100. And I think that's the other key here is your own entrepreneur goals as you determine what those are. And it could be more of a lifestyle type business, or you want to stay and spend more time with your family, your kids, or go travel. All those things are okay. And it's a very natural process. Not everybody's going to be Mark Zuckerberg where they want to take it all the way from start all the way to the end. Most people are going to say, hey, this has run its course. I need someone else to come in with either more capital or more energy or more employees to build this business. And so, at the end of the day, when's the right time to sell? There isn't a right time to sell. It's a lot of introspection as you're trying to figure that out and say, hey, I'm ready for the next opportunity, or I need to take a step back, or has this business outgrown my desired lifestyle? And that's okay. And that's a really common thing. And I've sold businesses where I used to operate other businesses where I had 60 employees. And so that was very draining, and I wasn't the best at that. And so when some of my other businesses got to a point, Eric, where I needed to hire employees and get to that next level, it wasn't the right business for me, and it was time for me to exit.
That's great that you have that experience to look back on and say, you know what, this is my time to get out. Like, let's get to the next thing. One thing before we end this video here, I was going to mention too, the Exitpreneur's Playbook is excellent if somebody's looking at exit, especially an FBA business. You can get a free copy of this by going to the link in the description there. That's going to go through a lot of different examples of people who have exited businesses and thinking about these types of questions of when you should sell, when you should think about moving on to the next thing. But what we're going to do in the next video is we're going to talk about how much does an Amazon FBA business typically sell for. We're going to talk about all of the aspects of that. So be sure to catch us on the next video.